July 13, what have you got for us? Apart from Saturn in Aries going retrograde for the first time since October 1998. 1:17 a.m. Okay, I've talked about this in a couple of videos. This is the shame aspect. This is the moon in Aquarius being very authentically itself, very much powerful in its weirdness. And Lilith and Scorpio, your shame and guilt and fear of being misunderstood when it comes to Scorpio things, right? So Scorpio things involving the reproductive area of the body. So your spicy guilt and shame and concern of being misunderstood, right? And that moon in Aquarius, maybe it pushed you a little bit too far. If you're watching this before you go out on Saturday night, take it easy. Okay. Then at 4 a.m, because we get to sit with that square for 3.5 hours. So then at 4 a.m, the moon, it's sort of asking for something to be thrown out here. Now look, that guilt and shame would have likely been something that has come from the past, right? So if you did go a bit too hard, if you did get into this moment of guilt and shame in regards to the behavior or what you said or all of that shit, Lilith wouldn't like you to feel that way about it anyway. But the purpose of that was to kind of remind you that that is the kind of emotional programming stuff that you get growing up. And you might not even know that you get it, right? Like it's the idea of somebody said something to you one time, but the child version of you poked it into the back of a drawer. Okay. And so the 4 a.m. aspect is kind of like, hey, remember how confident and powerful we were being a weirdo? Can we maybe be that weirdo and look at our idea of family now as this current and powerful weirdo? Okay. And something needs to be thrown away, like you're putting energy into an old mentality, right? Especially when it comes to family and safety within your home. Okay. Then at 5:45 a.m, Aquarius moon, Mercury Leo opposition. Okay. Stay in bed. That's my advice, because this is a bit of a old versus the new. Okay. Like this is kind of like the authority having a problem with your behavior, right? So it's almost like somebody else kind of coming in and being like, you know what you said, right? And the challenge in that aspect, because Mercury in Leo, while it is confident communication, Mercury in Leo has an aspect to it that it doesn't really want to say what it wants to say if it thinks that you might judge it, or if it thinks that it's not going to be perfect. Okay, it doesn't want to say it, right? Because Leo is like the performer, right? So if it can't like be loved while it's performing, while it's speaking, then it gets worried. It doesn't want to say anything. So that's why we get this opposition energy between Leo and Aquarius, because Aquarius kind of sits on the outside and is kind of like looks in. And while it has a perfectionist ideal as well, it's slightly different, but they both still have it, right? Aquarius, Leo, because they're both on the same axis. So they both have like a perfection seeking thing. So yeah, that could be an annoying conversation, right? And if it's not a conversation, it's going to be some kind of internal bullshit where like you want to remember how powerful you felt being your whole authentic weird self, but it's kind of like, what if people don't like it, right? And then 6:15, we sort of see Mars in Virgo get a little bit involved here, because it's like, well, let's just move forward. Let's just do something. Let's just look at the details here and figure out which way to go. And the moon in Aquarius kind of needs a little compromise, because it's like, yeah, but like, can we just do it this way, right? It's that kind of a compromise energy. 6:15. 6:48, you got to get something out of the childhood wound. Like something, there is still something around, is that aspect, right? And so we sit kind of in that aspect of probably going over the last 12 hours through the childhood wound filter, whether you're conscious of it or not, right? So 10:16 and 10:40, the moon kind of gets into a little bit of an argument with Saturn and Neptune, right? And Saturn by this stage is about to go retrograde, right? So it goes retrograde at 2:30 in the afternoon. So this is 10:16 and 10:40. And these are the last two minor aspects that Saturn and Neptune kind of make, with Saturn direct and Neptune retrograde, right? Then they're both retrograde. And so firstly, the moon in Aquarius and Saturn in Aries, you know, like, what are you building? What are you building? And moon in Aquarius, like, are you seeing it from the right direction, right? So there's kind of an energy, a little bit of a battle energy, right? Because the moon in Aquarius is a bit unfeeling sometimes, and Saturn in Aries is fire, right? So it's fired up, it's ready to go, and the moon in Aquarius maybe needs a little bit more information, right? So then at 10:40, Neptune retrograde makes that same aspect with the moon in Aquarius. And Neptune retrograde is kind of, it's in a dissolving process, but it's also in a reviewing process of like the last couple of months. And so this aspect could really bring up some shit that's happened over the last couple of months. And because Mercury retrograde pre-shadow is currently going on, we are looking back at the past, right? So then I think it's around 2:30, Saturn in Aries stations retrograde for the first time since October 1998, for the first time in Aries. Okay, so this is massive energy day. It's going to be a very frustrating day, okay, regardless of whether you partied too hard Saturday night or not. It's emotionally, it's a fucking roller coaster. So then, yeah, 3:31, we're back to kind of feeling a bit better, right? We're back. We've been through kind of the rough stage, apart from like Saturn now retrograde, starting to ask us to revise the last few months as well, right? Since May 24th. Let's revise. Remember how I made you kind of make a choice then around May 24th? Well, you made that choice. How do you feel about that? Do you want to maybe make some changes, right? That's what Saturn retrograde is saying. So then the moon making this kind of positive aspect, you know, the weirdo self and like your spiritual self are kind of like, okay, let's just keep going forward then, I guess. Let's keep going forward. Around 6 p.m, a little bit of a compromise needed between like your ego self and your emotional self, right? Your need for nurture and your need for adventure. Something's going to need a compromise there. Like maybe you want to stay home and your friend's like, let's go out for dinner, okay? I can't advise you either way on that. That's a tarot card situation, not an astrology one. Okay, so then 8:33 p.m, a little bit of stress, okay? Stress on the family thing. Like this is that full circle moment, right? Like where you had to kind of reconsider something within the family space and how it was holding you back from being yourself, some kind of program. We can't, that going to come back around. We're going to have a little bit of stress, but I think that stress kind of comes from whatever it was that you stopped giving energy to in the morning. It's like that kind of rubber band moment where you kind of stopped giving a fuck in the morning, and then at night, whether you go out and you're talking to your friend about it or you don't go out and you're sitting by yourself and you're like, oh, was that the right decision? It's that kind of energy, okay? But it's retrograde season now, because by the time we get to the end of the day tomorrow, Pluto, Neptune and Saturn will all be retrograde, with Chiron a couple of weeks away from going retrograde and Mercury about to go retrograde. So we are all in revision fucking mode, okay? So hopefully we will get some sleep on the night of the 13th, because that last aspect at 8:30, and then we don't have another one until 4:27 the next morning. So take it easy. Okay, I hope you're journaling. I hope you're journaling. You can get mine off Etsy, or you can even get the moon calendar. I highly advise the moon calendar. It's very helpful. Anyway, moon's about to move into fucking Pisces, and so then we're going to have a Pisces moon and an Uranus in Gemini at 0 degrees. And, you know, they don't really like each other. So, strap in and stay fucking weird. It's the only way to survive.